Well, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to discuss how to use the click tilde object and also how to use the preset object. So I'm going to start off with an empty patch, and I'm going to create my EasyDAC. I'm going to have a gain control, and I think I'll also add a meter so we can visually see what we're talking about. Go ahead and wire these guys up, and I'm also going to group these three just to make it a little easier to move them about the screen. Alright, now I'll create a metro here, and I'm going to set it to 100 milliseconds, and I'll wire in my toggle for it. Next, I will create the click. Wire that up, and now I can take my gain up a little bit and click the toggle, and you should be hearing the click. Now, so here's the thing. The click object creates an impulse, but what you might not know about click is that it uses an internal wavetable to shape the click, the sound of the click. So in fact, you can supply your own wavetable to change the sound that click will make. But first, since we'll be listening to click a lot in this video, I'm going to introduce a little bit of randomness so that just the machine gun click won't cause so much audio fatigue as we move through the video. So I'm going to do that by creating a random, and I'm going to set the max to 3. So this random is going to produce values of 0, 1, or 2. And if we look at its output and I toggle that, you can see 0, 1, and 2 are coming out. So what I want to do is I want to have a gate that will control whether or not that bang from the metro makes it through or not. And I'm going to do that by testing the random number to make sure that it's greater than 0. And so what will happen is if the value is 1 or 2, it will open the gate. Otherwise, it will, if the value is 0, it will close the gate. So let's listen to that. So now we're hearing a little bit of variation in whether the click is actually played or not. And hopefully this will this will help us. As we have to listen to the click a lot, it will help us not get fatigue over hearing just the machine gun of the click. Okay, so now let's talk about the wavetable of the click tilde object. So the wavetable is a small one. It contains 256 floating point numbers. So as long as we can provide 256 numbers, then we are good to go with the click. We can provide that as a wavetable. So the easiest way to do that is I'm going to use a multi-slider, and in the multi-slider I'm going to set the number of sliders to 256, and I'm going to set the range from 0 to 1. So now with this set, I can use the mouse and I can kind of draw shapes in here, and that's going to create 256 floating point numbers. Now, the click object, if we look in the help, we see that we can send it a set message to define those contents. So I'm going to convert these floating point numbers into a message by prepending the word set to the list and sending that into the click. So let's go ahead and turn it on. That's the default. I haven't set it yet. So if I change my so hopefully you can tell the difference between these different shapes and how they might affect your sound of your click using these different wavetables. Now, that's one way to sort of influence the sound of the click, but another way is to use a filter. So what I'll do is lets us make some much more interesting sounds. So in this case, I'm going to use a state variable filter. And the state variable filter has several outputs. So I'm going to stick that in line. It has a low pass, a high pass, a band pass, and a notch output. So I'll go ahead and hit play. And as you might be able to tell, we're not hearing much of anything, and it's because we haven't yet set the cutoff frequency for the state variable filter. It's set very low. So what I'll do next is I will create a live dial. Now in my dial, I will need to change its range. I'm going to set the range here. Instead of the default, I'll set it from 30 to, let's say, 4,000. And I want to set my unit style to frequency. So now we can see our hertz. We can go into the cutoff, and now we can hear how that affects the filter. I'm going to turn that off. So another thing that would be nice if we could switch between these outputs in the state variable. So I'm going to do that by creating a live menu, and in my menu I'm going to set the various values to off. That'll be a 0, or I can say low pass, high pass, band, or notch. So those are the possible values of my slider. Next, I want to create a selector, and I want a selector of 4 inputs. So I'm going to wire in number 1 to be the low pass, 2, 3, 4, and then the output from my menu I want to go into the selector. So now when I choose low pass, it's going to select that one, and then my output goes into the gain. So let's turn it back on again. There's low pass, high pass, band, and notch. We can do another thing with our filter that will be our resonance for the filter, and I'm going to set it to be a range from 0 to 1, and I want its output to be a float, and that'll go in there. And you may be able to hear as we get close to 0.7, we start to get some self-oscillation out of the state variable filter. And if we go up to 1, we get a very ringing sound coming out of there. So hopefully you can see how we can really get some very cool things out of the click function. With the resonance set high, manipulating the cutoff gives us a nice sort of, I guess, a tuned, kind of tuned drum sound. With a low resonance, we get a much deader sound, and we might, you know, try and use something like that as a kick drum. So obviously this is all pretty cool, and it would be nice to play with this in a little bit easier way. So what I want to do is I'm going to create a preset to save all the values of all these knobs that we have. So I'm going to give myself some room up here. Just as a caveat, some of the things I'm talking about here with preset are only available in Max 9. You can do this sort of technique, but in order to do that, you're going to need to use pattern storage and some other features that would work the same way. But recent changes in Max 9 to the preset object let us do this directly. So if you're not familiar with preset, there's an outlet here that lets us ignore certain objects. So for example, I don't want this preset to control my play toggle, so I can wire that exclusion outlet to my play toggle, and that way the state of play won't be affected by my preset. So I'm going to go ahead and lock the patch, and I'm going to shift click in preset 1. So that stores the current values for everything in that preset 1. So I'm going to start it, and then I'm going to change my patch some. So let's do something like this. And I'll set that to be preset 2, so shift click there. Now I can click on 1, and you see I've got my old values, and click on 2, and now I've got my new values, and that includes the type of filter, the settings for cutoff and resonance, as well as the values in the wavetable. So let's do one more thing, and in order to introduce some variation into the cutoff, what I want to do is I'm going to unlock the patch here, and I really want to sort of, I need to be after the gate, so I'll move everything down. I want another gate, and I'll have a toggle for that. And I want to set another random, and I'm going to make it use a float as a parameter here. You notice here is an integer, so it's going to be 0, 1, or 2. By using a float, it's going to be some floating point number between 0 and 1. So I'm going to take my number output from that, and I want to scale this from any value from 0 to 1, and I want it to be, let's say, from 30 hertz to 2000 hertz. So that will scale that floating point number, and then I'll stick that into my dial. Now I'll use the metro into the gate, and let's start it up. So there we've got a constant value, and if I click the toggle here, now I'm getting a change made to my cutoff value. Change my wavetable a little bit. Increase my gain some. And I'm going to save that as number 3. So shift click on the third spot. Now if I go to 1, let's say I don't want the gate, the random on, so go to 1 and I'll shift click again to save it, 2, shift click again to save it, and then 3. So you notice now the toggle of the randomness is stored in the preset. So 1 has no randomness, 2 has none, and 3 gives us random values. So now let's consider one other thing about the preset object, and this is, I think, a very cool feature that really opens up a lot, not only for finding unique combinations of things, but it's great for performance. And it's going to use, I'm going to use a slider, and I'm just going to use it as a default, the default values, and I'm going to scale, which the default slider produces a value between 0 and 127. And I have 3 presets, so I'm going to scale a floating point number between 1 and 3. And I'm going to send that scaled value into the preset object. Now one final thing I want to do is I want to wire this slider into the ignore list of the preset, because I don't want the slider value to be part of that. The slider is going to control the preset. So let's lock the patch and start our click sounds. So what's going to happen is as I move my slider, it's morphing between the presets. So that's very cool. So if you notice, starting at the first preset, as I move forward, you can see the selection in the preset object start to show how much of each preset is part of it. And you can see how the the wavetable morphs. If we look further down, we see I'll have to make this a little bigger. can see how the gain morphs. We can see the type of selector for the state variable filter changes from low pass to high pass to band, and also the toggling the state of our random section that adds to the cutoff for the state variable filter. Hopefully YouTube is the audio will be good enough that you can hear the differences between these click sounds. I'm not sure how it's going to turn out, but if you're having trouble hearing it, I would suggest maybe wearing headphones or something like that will help you out there. So what I'm going to do is, and this is true as much as possible for all of these videos, is I'm going to put this patch into the video description. So if you're unfamiliar with Macs, basically you'll see a line that says begin patch and end patch. You just select all that text, and then once you have it selected, you'll go up to the file menu and say new from Clipboard. And you'll have this patch in Macs, and you can play with it, and hopefully all the values that it currently is will be saved, and you'll be able to play with it. So that's all for this video. If you have any questions or any new ideas that could improve this, then definitely let me know. The click object has a lot of flexibility, and you can do a lot of cool things with it. And do percussion sounds that don't even necessarily need to have a traditional kind of oscillator. So yeah, give this a try and let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks a lot for watching.